Hi, my name's Tim Buckley, and it's really good to be with you here in Widcombe. So many years ago, in a job interview, I was asked a rather strange question. If I could have any superhero power, what would it be? Now, I'm not quite sure why I was asked this question. I guess some psychologist had decided to be very illuminating. But I knew my answer straight away. I'd want to be able to fly, like a bird, or a plane, or Superman. In fact, sometimes as a child, I'd often dream about actually flying. And dreams are powerful, aren't they? Sometimes they're perhaps just daydreams, but maybe they're really deep longings or hopes, perhaps unfulfilled dreams that we hold on to. We often maybe have never even shared them out loud with other people. And it makes me want to tell a story that I love. Everyone loves a good story. I love telling stories. I love hearing them. I try and collect ones that speak into our lives. I especially love the ones that are amazing but true. And this is one of those. Larry Walters was an ordinary suburban guy who lived in the early 1980s in California. Larry was a 33-year-old North Hollywood truck driver, but he'd always dreamed of flying. He tried to join the Air Force when he was younger, but turned down because of deficiencies with his vision. But he still dreamed of one day reaching for the skies. One day, Larry hatched a plan. Using his garden lawn chair, a bit like this, Larry rigged up 42 helium-filled weather balloons with some rope, anchored himself to the ground. And armed simply with a radio, a pellet gun to pop any of the balloons if he took off a foot or two, and some jugs of water for ballast, he hoped to rise to perhaps a few dozen feet, gracefully into the sky from his girlfriend's backyard in San Pedro. Maybe he would travel a block or two, pop a balloon, and then make a gentle landing. Well, finally the day came and all Larry's friends gathered in the garden and the mooring was cut. And Larry, who was a big chap, rocketed upwards like a cork out of a bottle, within moments passing 12,000 feet. He passed some private planes on the way up, and Larry was spotted by some baffled jetliner pilots. As Larry gently drifted across California, screaming no doubt, police, helicopters and reporters were in hot pursuit. After several hours, his craft eventually drifted back towards the earth, finally crashing into some power lines near Long Beach Airport, where Walters is promptly arrested. In fact, he had to pay a $1,500 settlement with the Federal Aviation Administration, which accused him of flying in a reckless manner, operating too close to airports and failing to maintain contact with the control tower. But one of the first people to get to Larry as he landed was a female reporter who'd been tracking his unexpected adventure and asked him if he'd do it again. To which the rather shell-shocked Larry replied, no doubt with a bit of a nervous twitch, no. But then she asked him this killer question. Larry, why did you do it? And you know what the truck driver simply replied? It's a great answer. Well, you can't just sit there, can you? When I first heard this story a few years ago, I was reminded, bizarrely enough, of that famous account in the scriptures found in Matthew 14, Mark 6 and John 6, the account of Jesus and Peter walking on the water. So the disciples are far out on the water, we're told, 3 or 4 miles in fact. This is no pond. They're in a boat, alone, for Jesus has left them, and we're told that he'd gone up a mountain to pray through the watches of the night. And they've sailed and then rowed across the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, and the waves start to tear against them. Danger and fear permeate the accounts. By the evening, the boat's battered by the waves. The Greek word that's used is basanizo, which literally means tortured, tormented by these waves. They're clearly really in distress. The boat's far from land, the wind's against them, so they're rowing with all their might. In fact, the Sea of Galilee is about 13 miles long and 7 miles wide and sits in this depression that's almost 700 feet below sea level, and it's surrounded by mountains that rise to about 2,000 feet above sea level on the eastern side, and the wind wickedly funnels down those hills, creating sudden violent storms that for even these seasoned fishermen, we're told, perhaps causes them at this moment to fear for their lives. So during this night-long battle for their lives, the disciples are probably shattered, they're spent, and understandably they're fearful. Now Mark's account tells us, and this is important in these days of lockdown and struggle for us, something really important. He, Jesus, while praying, we're told, sees the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Now, Jesus hasn't got night vision goggles and a telescopic sight. Remember, they're 3 or 4 miles off the coast. No, Jesus is praying for them. And he sees them. And he's moved in his heart for them. He wants to go to them. That's good news for them. And it's great news for us too, as Jesus intercedes for us. The text says that at the 4th watch of the night, Jesus decides to come to them in the middle of the sea, somewhere between 3 and 6 a.m. then. And he's motivated by his concern for their struggles. And while it's still dark, we're told Jesus makes his appearance. Now the disciples, well, they don't recognise him at first in the midst of all the chaos. They've been alone with the threatening waves for hours. They're tired from struggling all night and their reserves are spent. That's when Jesus reveals himself to them, at their lowest moment. And with the roar of the waves and the spray of the sea drenching them all, they first of all mistake him for a ghost. Over their cries of fear, Jesus calls them, "Take heart, it's I, have no fear." It's a pointer to the reader of Matthew's Gospel of who Jesus is, the great I am. Take heart, it's me. And well, the rest, as we know, is history. Peter steps out, and as every Sunday school child will tell you, taking his eyes off Jesus, he looks at the water and says, "Hang on, this is mad, I'm a fisherman. I know this stuff isn't supposed to hold me up," and he sinks. Silly, naughty Peter took his eyes off Jesus. But hang on a minute. The man, a fisherman, got out of the boat and he walked on water. For the rest of their lives, those disciples watching, the ones on the nice, comfy, dry seats, could say to their friends and families, "We saw Jesus walk on water. And we saw Peter, for a bit, walk on water." But Peter, loud, brash, dreamer Peter, could say, "I saw Jesus walk on water. And you know what? For a while, I walked on water too." So I wonder who you might identify with in this story. And at what point of the story you'd identify with. Those disciples in the boat, overwhelmed by fear, trapped, wondering where Jesus was before he arrived. Or when he turns up, thinking it's all too good to be true. Or maybe you're like Peter, longing to run to Jesus, to be near him, because he means peace, safety, hope, joy. Or maybe you feel like Peter. Or maybe you feel like Peter, who stepped out of the boat but is sinking fast. You know, I know it's so easy to be like those first disciples, clinging to what we know, what feels secure, while everything rages all around us and the storms threaten to sink us. We might be like those disciples who might feel safer, drier, but maybe with regrets, stuck in that boat, always wondering if there's more to life than this. With Jesus always held slightly at a distance, some figure we can just about make out, but would never dare to imagine he wants to call us to come close. Or maybe we can be more like Peter or Larry in our story, one who can't just sit there and says, "I'm going to dare to dream. I'm going to step out, dare to reach out for something beyond myself, reach out for Jesus, who when you fall, and we all do, will always reach out for you." Because as the book says, if you want to walk on water, you've got to get out the boat. Or as Larry would tell us, well, you can't just sit there, can you?